So we're learning the Maimer Minu Melech, appointing a king, from the third Chabad Rebbe, Reb Menachem Mendel of Lubavitch, Reb Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the first Menachem Mendel. And he's talking about the virtue of a king. So I want to get right to the text today. We're on page Kuf Tes, 109 in the English, equivalent to the Hebrew letters, Hebrew page. And we are about 16, 18 lines down on the page. And I'll tell you exactly where. It's the line begins with a parentheses quoting Mishlei, Proverbs, chapter 29:4. Towards the end of that line, there's a period, and then there's an acronym for Vav Gimel Chof, the Gamkein, Tzarech Liyos. We're talking here about David HaMelech, King David, that not only was he of practicality in implementing kingship and rulership, but it was done with smarts, with chachma, and more so was also done with chesed and gevura, with kindness and severity, judgment, discipline at times. And we spoke a lot about this yesterday in psychological terms and in practical terms, which I hope you got a chance to think about it and to implement it as you go on. So let's go. We're again, page Kuf Tes, Gam Kain. We're on the line that starts.
Rabbi Dalfin, before you get started, I wanted to, on the Chabad.org text here, there's a note that I didn't quite understand. He says that Tzemach Tzedek is explaining why 2 sets of 70 years were granted to David. I don't understand what the 2 sets are. I understand that the quality of Chochmah and Malchus, but I don't know what...
Well, first of all, you're further on the page. We're not there yet. We're in the middle of the explanation. So I think you're further on. But the second 70, he's referring to the Zohar. The bottom of 216, the Medrash says, the Yalkut Shmoini says that David is called Bar Nafla. He wasn't supposed to live, and Adam Arishan gave him 70. That's Yalkut Shmoini, a Medrash. Then he quotes the Zohar parts of a Yishlach, which says that Avram, Yaakov, and Yosef each gave David some of his years, and to live 70 years, which is another.
Okay, that's what I must have missed. Okay.
Yeah. So later on, go back and find it. It's again, it's in chapter 2, towards about 20-25 lines down, quoting Zohar Pashas Vayishlach. In the old Hebrew, it's the last line. And that's what he's explaining. That's what he's ultimately going to explain. The reason why David was only given these 70 and not 140 years. But we're in the middle of the explanation. Okay, so we're going to learn now the last 3, starting from the last 3 words on the line that begins with Mishlei Chof Tes Daled. The Gamkein Tzorech Liyos Hamshochos Atzmius HaChesed B'midas HaMalchus. Not only is it necessary for the essence of wisdom, of Chochmah, to be drawn into Malchus, royalty and kingship, but also it's necessary for the essence of Chesed. Kumashikosu b'David, as it says by David, Chazdei David Hanemonim. It's a verse in Yeshaya and Isaiah. The kindness, the benevolence of David, of the loyal, trusted David. It also says, "Vayihi David oiseh chesed l'chol amoy," and David did kindness to his entire nation. Shahoye b'chinas hamlucha shaloi miyusedes al teva chesed. David HaMelech's kingship and rulership was predicated on the nature of his chesed. Lashpia la'amay, to give to the people. Now, just briefly, I want to explain this. There's a person who does chesed, but they aren't chesed. Their chesed is imposed in them, and they understand with their mind, they understand with their mind that the right thing to do now is chesed. So they do chesed. But if you ask, are they inherently chesed? No. In fact, the previous Rebbe writes in some of the discourses, sometimes they can be just the opposite. Just the opposite. They can be gvura, but for some reason they've been trained and programmed to be chesed. But they're not isha chesed. They're maise chesed. Their behavior is chesed. This also is a very psychological, important idea. To differentiate the action that you do, the behavior, is that who you are, or is that something that you do? The Rebbe says here, the Tzemach Tzedek says, by David HaMelech, and this all justifies him being the king, not Saul, not Shaul, not Shlomo, not Yechizkiyahu, but actually David, and that's where Mashiach comes from, David. Why? Because David's essence was chesed, and that chesed was the way he governed. Now, you're probably asking yourself, if that's the case, how is it that he had so much blood on his hand to the point that he wasn't allowed to build the Beis HaMikdash? And the answer is the blood was necessary, but he was chesed. In other words, chesed doesn't mean being a fool. What does it say in Shulchan Aruch? The Rebbe always quoted this chapter in Hilchos Shabbos, and that's why the Rebbe's position was you're not allowed to give back a drop of land, an inch of land to the enemy, because he quoted a Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch says in Hilchos Shabbos, if the enemy comes just for iske kashu teven, you know what iske kashu teven means? For matters of straw. But it's the enemy coming into your territory, breaching the gate on October 7th. There they came to kill with ammunition. But imagine they were just trying to go in to do a business deal, but they're breaking through and it's the enemy. The halacha is you're supposed to get up, not you're allowed to. You have to get up on Shabbos, take your ammunition, protect yourself even if it means killing the enemy. That's a halacha in Hilchos Shabbos. And the Rebbe always used that halacha to support his position of not giving back a drop of an inch of land. Why am I saying this? Because the Rebbe was Isha Chesed. And yet, he's quoting from Hilchos Shabbos, because Hilchos Shabbos says that if you don't do that, you're wrong. So Chesed doesn't mean this free love, the 1960 San Francisco Haight-Ashbury free love. That's nonsense. That's Yetzer Hara, I'm sorry to say. That's indulgence, okay? And it's not just, it's part of the whole, even today with therapies and healing and trauma and all these things, we've come into an arena of, it's not necessarily pure. It doesn't mean it doesn't have to be done. Because people do suffer and we need to deal with them and help them, right? But if you sit back and you want to ask yourself about yourself, you know, am I an Isha Chesed or am I not an Isha Chesed, but I do Chesed? David HaMelech was the Melech Yisrael because as Melech Yisrael, as the Jewish king, he personified Chesed as a nature by him. And the fact that he had to kill and protect and conquer, that was the name of the game as appointed by Hashem. In other words, that does not contradict his appointment as a warrior. David HaMelech didn't choose to be a warrior. He was told to be a warrior. This is an important lesson. When you're told to do something, even if it goes against your grain, if you're really a true loyal servant of God, you do it. With the famous story with the Alter Rebbe's Chassid, Mittel Rebbe's Chassid, I'm sorry, Reb Yosef Bashenkovitzer. There was a city in Russia, Bashenkovitz. And Reb Yosef was a Chassidic Jew, a Chassid of the Mittel Rebbe, and he was a mashpia. And he had Yechidas with the Alter Rebbe, with the Mittel Rebbe one day, with the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe told him he should become a wagon driver, and he became known as Yosef Bal Agola. You probably have read the story in the writings of Chabad. He didn't say a word. The Alter Rebbe told a mashpia. You imagine the Alter Rebbe tells a rabbi, a rav, you are to stop being a rav rabbi and become a wagon driver, a wagoneer. And as a chassid, he didn't question, he didn't ask, he just did. And years later, after the Alter Rebbe passed away, and it was already the time period of his son, the Mittler Rebbe of Dovber, and he's older already, so he asks if he can now go back to being a mashpia. And the Mittler Rebbe says, yes, now you can go back. You know why? Because you had your tikkun. What was your tikkun? That you once took someone in a wagon, and he was a Jew who left Yiddishkeit, and he went very far, and you spoke to him, and you were makarev him, and you made him become a Baal Teshuvah. So the Mittler Rebbe said to him, that's what my father, Alter Rebbe, had in mind. He had in mind that you need for tikkun of your neshama to make someone become a Baal Teshuvah. And being a mashpia and a rav and rabbi is a very nice thing, an important thing, but your neshama had that already. It wasn't lacking that. But it was lacking making a Baal Teshuvah. Now, of course, I can't say this, you can't say this. A tzaddikim like the Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, they could say it because they saw the neshama. But what do we learn? We have a right to learn from it, and the Rebbe spoke about this many times, and that is that the fact that. So here, ask yourself a question: Rabbi Yosef, what was he inherently? A rabbi rav or a wagon driver? And the answer is neither. He was a servant of Hashem vis-a-vis the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe. And because he was plugged in correctly and he didn't let his ego get in the way, he listened. So when it was time for him to be a wagon driver for many years, ultimately making someone be a Baal Teshuvah, he did that. And then as soon as that shlichus and that mission finished, his tikkun finished, the Mittler Rebbe says, go back to being a mashpia. It's a very powerful lesson. Someone goes through life and they're in one area of life. And then as they get older and they go in and they retire, whatever, they somehow they go into another area. It could be. So it's hard to know which is my shlichus, right? Which is my shlichus? You know, when I was a much younger man, not that I'm old, Baruch Hashem, but when I went on a shlichus, I was 23 years old. I came from 770, got married, and was sent to Marin County, as you know. And, you know, when I was a bacher, I enjoyed learning, and I learned a lot, and I knew how to learn, and I was into learning, and I was into davening. You go out, there's no time to daven 3 hours every morning. You got to get on the road to find Jews to put tefillin on and to find people who want to support Chabad, the shul, the Chabad house. You're running around. So much so that I once asked the Rebbe, after the Rebbe initiated the study of Rambam, I said to the Rebbe, I just don't have the time to study 3 chapters a day of Rambam. If I do that, I felt I can't do the work that I'm here for. I didn't come to Marin County to learn Rambam. For Rambam, I could stay in Brooklyn and learn Rambam. But I felt guilty. The Rebbe said every male should learn 3 chapters a day. And he said, if you can't, you learn 1. And then he said women should learn Sefer HaMitzvahs. And all of a sudden, I'm just learning Sefer HaMitzvahs. I find myself, I'm a woman. I've always been told, by the way, I have a female soul. Anyway, I have a feminine soul. But I felt guilty. So I wrote to the Rebbe. And I asked him, can I fulfill my obligation of learning Rambam with listening to tapes in the car. This is when car phones just were starting in the mid to late 80s, you know. So if I hear someone teaching the Rambam, it's as though kind of I'm learning it, you know, on some level. And that's what I asked the Rebbe. And he answered me. Baruch Hashem, usually the Rebbe answered my questions, whether they were silly or not. And the Rebbe said, I already spoke about it. So I called Rabbi Groner and I said, what does this mean? Because I don't remember her ever speaking about this particular question. Can I fulfill the learning of the obligation, the Rebbe's obligation on me as a chassid to learn the Rambam through listening to a tape? So Rabbi Groner said, look, but the Rebbe, it seems what he means is, he said that those that can't learn 3 should learn 1. Those that can't learn 1 should learn Sefer HaMitzvahs. It's not about being a woman, a female, being a male, being a rabbi. It's about what you can do. If what you can do is listen to Rambam in the car, do that. That was Rabbi Groner's own explanation. So why am I saying this? Because a person never... But I still was bothered about the thing that I couldn't keep up my learning the way I was used to. So I spoke to 2 mashpiyim of mine. One was Rav Mendel Futafas, you know, a senior mashpiyah from Russia and everything else, as you know. And the other one was Rabbi Yoel Kahn, my yeshiva mashpiyah, the chayzer of the Rebbe. And they both said the same thing to me. You have one thing you have to do. You have to be Makarev Yidden. You have to bring Yidden back to the fold. That's why the Rebbe sent you to Marin County. He didn't send you to learn. He didn't send you to Dalfin. Your job is that. And as I think about this, is 40 years ago, 42, 43 years ago when they told me this. And I think about it now, as I go into kind of the older years, that it's so true. The Rebbe, opened a window telling me your mission and your tikkun kind of is to bring Yidden back to Yiddishkeit and to provide a haven for Yiddishkeit, for Torah in Marin County. And what do you want to do? You want to fulfill your own satisfaction. That's ego. Okay, that's ego. In other words,
the reason why the Rabbi Groner didn't ask the Rebbe?
No. If he had to ask the Rebbe every single question, he wouldn't be able to do his job. You know, the Rebbe gave me an answer. Now, you either understand it or not, or and this is the way he understood it, and it made sense. The Rebbe said, I already spoke about it. So he did, the Rebbe, my question was, he didn't speak about a tape, using a tape in the car. So he didn't talk about that particular detail, but the overall message, he spoke about. If you can't do 3, do 1. If you can't do 1, do Sefer HaMitzvahs. And if you take that thought, you follow that thought, if you can't do it in the text, even whatever it is, listen to a tape. It's a natural progression. It's not, you don't have to be, Albert Einstein to understand that. But, I just wanted to verify. And when you verify with someone else, especially a person like Rabbi Groner was with the Rebbe all the years, I just felt, kind of a confirmation. Anyway, but I don't want to get lost in the story. What's more important is this detail that what Rabbi Mendel Futafas and Rabbi Yoel Kahn told me is your shlichus is one thing and one thing only. And this is important, not just for me, but for everyone. We have to be focused on what our shlichus is. Now, of course, you'll say, how do I know what my shlichus is? We'll discuss that, and it's not for now. We need to fabring about that. But if you pay attention, if you pay attention and you don't follow your ego, you will know what your shlichus is. Okay? In other words, if you move from America to Eretz Yisrael, and there's a purpose, and you have, depends when you move. Are you still not married? Are you a young man? Are you later? You have to look carefully at the scenario when you moved, why you moved, and what's going on to kind of determine what your shlichus is. Now, I'm saying all this to explain over here about David HaMelech. David HaMelech, we said that he says that his Teva HaChesed Lashpia L'Amri. His nature was to give influence as a ruler and king to the nation. And at the same time, we say, you're not allowed to build the Beis HaMikdash. Hashem says to David HaMelech, only your son Shlomo will build it because you have too much blood on your hand. So I explained the difference, and it doesn't detract from who he was as a king, and more so, as a king, he was let's use this word. He was the pedagogue. That's the word I'm looking for. He was the pedagogue of kingship. There are other rulers, and there were other kings, and they had smarts, and they did a good job. They weren't a pedagogue, a master, whatever the word that you're comfortable, a nasi, that ever used the word nasi. You understand? There is the master.
Is that a prince? Isn't a Nasi a prince?
Yeah, Nasi's a prince, but what do we mean by a prince? We mean this is the individual who sets the tone because he is that. Someone
The
who...
word would be paragon.
What?
Paragon.
Sorry.
Paragon. Thank you. A good word. Also good.
He's
Yeah.
the pedigree, I would say. The pedigree, like the original.
The original idea. Okay, I hear it. Okay, whatever the word is, paragon, pedigree, master, but that's who David was. Back to the text. Now he's going to explain, Hillel start explaining why Avram gave 5 years to David now. Maybe this is where the Chabad.org note that you're looking at comes into play. And this is the 5 years Shenosim leAvram. That Avram gave to David, Shehem Hei Chasodim, he gave him 5 powers of sweetness. Avram was about sweetness. Avram, my lover, my beloved. And he took 5 of those called Hei Chasodim, and he said, here, David, take him. Ki Avram Ha'isha Chesed. Avram was the personified Chesed. Boy, as it says by Avram Shoya Machnis Orchim, he brought in people, guests. Umashkan, he fed them and he gave them to drink. And he couldn't live with himself if he didn't do it. As we know, on the 3rd day after he's circumcised, when the most pain, he's standing outside in the desert when it's boiling hot, and he's looking for a passerby to say, come in and eat, so you can praise Hashem. Because he couldn't live with himself. In other words, Moshe, Avram had more pain from not feeding someone, not having an oirach, a guest, than from the pain of the incision of the milah, of the circumcision. For Omnam, however, we have the Tzemach Tzedek now asks a powerful question. What is David about? Physical, material rulership. He was spiritual. He was David HaMelech. In other words, what he really was communicating to the Jewish nation was the faculties of spirituality. If so, why were 5 years deducted from Avram's life, which is all about spirituality? In other words, in spirituality, Mark, there's no deduction. It's not like I'm giving you here an item. Here, there's something that I have, and I give it to you. And once I give it to you, I don't have it. So therefore, I'm lacking, I'm missing it. The concept of the 5 chasadim, this is the Tzemach Tzedek's question, listen well. If you tell me that Avram gave David 5 ice creams, so he's missing 5 ice creams. If you tell me he gave him 5 properties, he's missing 5 properties. But he didn't. What did he give him? What does it say? We just learned a line ago. He gave him 5 chasodim, 5 spiritual powers of chesed. So why is it lacking? In other words, I'm using the word giving. Hello, Chevra. I'm using the word giving, but it's the wrong word. It's not the English word giving, because giving implies I give something to you. I give you an object, an item. He shared spirituality of his with David. 5 of those energies. So when you talk about 5 energies, there should be nothing lacking from Avram. So if so, why did Avram live 5 years less? That's the question. I want to make sure you understand the question. Moshe, I see you're concentrating. Do you follow the question or not?
No, I don't. I'm sorry. I'm not. I'm trying to. I don't understand the question.
Okay. Do you know what we're referring to before we ask the question?
Yeah, about the 5 years.
That what? 5 years. Tell me. That Avram, right? We quoted a Zohar way before that Avram gave.
180 was 125.
Right. He was supposed to live 180, the Zohar says. He lived only 175 years. Why? Because he gave 5 years of his to David HaMelech. Yaakov gave 40 plus whatever, 20 something, and Yosef gave. And if you accumulate all the years that each gave to David, that equals 70. Right? That's what the Zohar said. Tzemach Tzedek asked a question earlier. Hey, I just thought other Mauritian gave him 70. Why do they have to give another 70? And if they gave him another 70, he should have lived 140 years, and David only lived 70 years. Those are the two questions that we asked much earlier. Now he's starting to explain. So he says about Avram gave David 5 powers of energy, of chesed energy. And hence, he only lived 175 years, not 180. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now he asks
So
the
one
question.
second, but Rabbi,
Yeah.
1 second. So that's okay. That's clear to me also. Like I had Moshe's also clarity, but only thing is, but if he's only mentioning about Abraham, why he doesn't bring up Yaakov, the missing?
Wait! You're jumping. Just relax. We got another page and a half to learn here. We're learning Chassidus over here, Yoini. You should be used to. We ask a question in the beginning, we answer it a half a year later. You got this Chabad Chassidus. This is deep stuff. This is not just question and answer. Open a book and be inspired, and then go eat shont. This is a different. We're in a different world now. Okay. So now Moshe. So now the Tzemach Tzedek asks a question on his own word, his own explanation. He says, since Avram gave 5 powers of chesed energy to David HaMelech, energy is ruchnius. In ruchnius, when sharing ruchnius, it doesn't take away from your ruchnius. Ruchnius, Moshe, is not giving an item. It's not physical. Let me ask you a question.
Why not?
Why not? I'll give you an example.
One person's focus is to help. If you take care, you could be taking care of someone's gashmias. That could be your shlichus, and by taking care of their gashmias, you're helping their ruchnias.
We're not talking about taking care of the gashmias. Why you mix? We're talking about giving a inya ruchni, sharing an inya ruchni, the power of chesed, not physical chesed, the energy. That's why I use the word the energy. You're thinking about the physical chesed. I'm not talking about that. We're talking about the inya ruchni that drives the chesed. In other words, the battery that charges the chesed, the spiritual battery in the soul. So 1 second. Let's take an example. Seichel, the mind, right? Seichel. When you share with me a thought, has it diminished any of your thought? The thought that you know and you share it with me, by sharing it with me, has it become any less by you? No. That's the question. That's the question. And that, by the way, is seichel, is intellect. Here we're talking about
Why did Avram lose his life over that? When I share my thoughts, I don't lose my thought. When Avram shared his spirituality, why did he lose his life?
That's the question. That's the question that Tzemach Tzedek is asking. Menashe, what you just asked is what he's asking. So now I see we understand. That's the question. We'll continue tomorrow. It's always better not to leave with a question. So I'll just end with a word. Tonight is my. Well, first of all, today Chav Beis is the yahrzeit of the holy Reb Shlomo Karliner, the father figure, right, of the Karlin stolen Hasidim. And he had a strong relationship with the Alter Rebbe, even though when he wanted to come into the Alter Rebbe's territory, the Alter Rebbe gave him 3 conditions, but it didn't detract from their overall relationship, and Hitaka did not come because he wasn't willing to teach Hasidus the way the Alter Rebbe wanted, which is you got to do it yourself. Tzaddik ben Manasseh Yichya, Reb Shlomo Karliner believed Tzaddik ben Manasseh Yichya means that Tzaddik will do it for you. Through the Tzaddik's Emunah, Ava, and Yira, you get a high. But you yourself don't have to work on that in a way that, is much work. The Alter Rebbe said no. So they had a difference in the approach, i.e. the difference between, the Karlin stolen approach and the Chabad approach. But that did not detract from their relationship. And you see, because he didn't walk away angry, he understood. This is the Alter Rebbe's region as appointed by Reb Mendel Vitebsker and Reb Avram Kalisker when they left Eretz Yisrael in 1788. And therefore, he has a right to determine how he wants Chassidus to be taught here. Okay, so that's today, but he was a big tzaddik. And in fact, I read a letter that the Frierdiker Rebbe was once where he's buried. I don't remember now where he's buried, Reb Shlomo Karliner. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, he's somewhere in a cave, like under, and the previous Rebbe got down on his feet and his body, and he crawled in to daven there. I read it in the letter of either the Rebbe or the Frierdiker Rebbe. I read it, I wouldn't make it up. And that to me says a tremendous thing, that here is the previous Rebbe, the 6th Rebbe of Chabad, of the Alter Rebbe. What is he creeping to Reb Shlomo Karliner? Because Reb Shlomo was a tzaddik. And he was in that area, and he wanted to be maspal by tzaddikim, which is a lesson to us. You don't have to be a Breslov chassid to daven at Reb Nachman. I'm not talking about going there Rosh Hashanah. That's a different thing. But like I was invited to go there, and I told the person who invited me, I'm going there, but I'm davening to Reb Nachman as a tzaddik. My connection to the Alter Rebbe and the Chabad Rebbeim, but it doesn't detract. Just like we just said, Ruchnius doesn't detract. Okay. That's one thing. The other thing is tonight, Chav Gimel is my Mechutin, Reb David Nevich's yahrzeit. My son-in-law is the rabbi, the Rav in Tel Aviv of the Chabad house, the 2 shuls. So Reb David was a very special Jew. He was a Baal Teshuvah early on in the 1970s. I believe he became Baal Teshuvah. But it's interesting, and I would have to tell this my son-in-law. There's a letter in the Frierdiker Rebbe's letter where he mentions the name Neidich. The family name is Neidich. And he writes there, and he had a connection. It looks like this Neidich was a well-off person who gave tzedakah and he supported. And he thanks him for supporting the previous Rebbe, his institutions. And he mentions there that he comes from Karlin dynasty, Gezha, Hasidim. It's amazing, when I see these things, how the Frierdiker Rebbe, and even, the Rebbe, the Rashag, how it's people from the past generation. They can go back 150 years, because I asked my son-in-law and I asked my Mechutin, do you know that if you're the same Neidich family, the previous Rebbe writes that you have what to do with Karlin. They said, we have no idea. His father they came around the turn of the century or a little, 1920s, 19, whatever. They came to America, Minnesota, St. Paul, who knows, and here and there, North Dakota. They were from Yidden all over. And then as the generations went on, it became less and less. But these were Yidden from Russia and Poland and Hungary, and more talking about Russia now. And they don't know the tradition. Because I'm saying the yichus, the pedigree is lost. And I'll tell you why it's lost. I see it in my work. You know why it's lost? Because no one made an issue of it. No one spoke about it. So thank you very much. Your modesty of not speaking about from where you came means that your grandchildren have no idea where you come from. And if that's what you want, that's what you get. But imagine Hillel has a name Zeitlin, so he has some kind of record and yichus and that can go back. But I wouldn't know about my family if not for my father and my grandfather, and they shared 200 years of. So I was lucky, But many people aren't, and especially today, they can be from the most Hasidic and Litvak families. They have no idea where they come from. So Reb David Nadich, I have a belief based on this letter, was associated with the Karliner, and the Karliner's yahrzeit today, and David's yahrzeit is tomorrow. You see, the Ashgacha Pratis, very interesting Ashgacha Pratis. He's a very fine person. He took me, he lived in Miami, he lived in many places because he was in the transportation business. So when he lived in Miami, he invited me, and I'm telling you, he treated me so royally and so beautifully. And he would, in the building on Collins Avenue in Miami, he would there was a minion, and he would take me and he would show me off. This is my Mechutin, Rabbi Dalfin, and he was a simple Jew. But he went down to daven three times a day. Then he treated me to go to the restaurants. I said, David, I'm not such a fancy person that I need restaurants. I can eat simple food. He says, no, it's my honor. I want to take you to a restaurant, take you out. I said, okay. So like I told his wife this morning, the humanity, the menschlichkeit that I saw by this person was exemplary, Wasn't, Mr. Talmud Chochem, Mr. Rabbi, and he grew up a full beard, and he passed away as a Lubavitcher Chassid. He passed away up north in an Arab village. They have a nursing home there where some Jews go, and I was able to sing to him the Gunim as he, was slowly passing on, the few weeks before, and I rubbed his feet, and I have memories of departing from him in a very special way. Yes, Moshe.
Rabbi Dalfin, when are you coming? When are you coming here to Ramat Bet Shemesh that we can bring with you in person? When are you coming?
When am I coming? Should I get on a plane tomorrow? Should I get on a plane?
Yeah.
Good luck getting a ticket. I tried getting a ticket.
I can get a ticket. I got to schlep 20 hours, 25 hours.
Come for 2 weeks. Come for 2 weeks.
And what am I going to do for 2 weeks? What am I going to do there? Hang out? What am I going to do?
You go to restaurants.
Bring one time, a second time, not 20 times. Okay, maybe. I'll talk to my wife. I'll talk to my Ashes Chayil, my advisor, and say that Moshe Braun made a public request on the shiur. He got me. He caught me. He got me in a corner. I'll see, because I know. I was thinking maybe you'd rather go for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I don't know. We'll see. I have a few things this week, so I think this week I can't go. Maybe next week.
What about Sukkot?
So Sukkot I would go, but Sukkot, my grandson from Florida is making an upsharing here in Crown Heights by 770. So I'd like to be there. It's a half-hour event. It's not a major event, but I don't think it will look nice that the grandfather, the Zayd, is not there since I live here in Borough Park.
Right.
So and also
If I get a ticket, I come to you.
Listen,
Get tickets.
learning the Chassidus and it gives a lot of satisfaction and it's But I feel it, Moshe. I feel the warmth. I feel the interest, and I thank you for it. And you're doing what the Talmidim of the Rashbi did. It's a Zohar. You just remind. It says in the Zohar HaKodesh that the Talmidim praised Reb Shimon with all kinds of accolades. So the Rabbeim, the Chabad Rabbeim, asked a question. Why is that necessary? Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, you need accolades to turn him on. And it's explained in Chassidus that the accolades that they gave to Reb Shimon drew him into them. Sure, he was Reb Shimon, and he did, but it became kind of personalized by them showing endearment to Reb Shimon. So by you saying that, it draws me to you. Guys, see you tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. Have a great day. Nice talking, nice upbringing. Shalom. Bye-bye.
Go ahead.
Bye-bye.